Now, if you remember, I kind of wondered why GMADE added these helper springs to the top of the main springs instead of the bottom like most trucks are. Hey guys, welcome back to Revolution XRC. Welcome to the next part of my GMADE Sawback Sport build series. In this part of the series, we are going to assemble the shocks. Now, before we continue on with the shock portion of this series, I'd like to discuss the leaf spring configuration from the last part of the series. Now, if you remember, I kind of wondered why GMADE added these helper springs to the top of the main springs instead of the bottom like most trucks are. Well, I finally think I have the answer to that question. It's because, if you can see here, with these helper springs at the bottom of the main spring, it has a potential to get hung up on rocks and get bent downward. So I'm going to go with the GMADE recommendation and put these helper springs onto the top of the main spring, just to prevent this spring from getting ruined by getting bashed against the rocks. So I'll go ahead and do that, and once that is complete, we'll move ahead with the shock portion of this build. Alright, so I've swapped the springs around from the bottom to the top, but I didn't quite like it because, as you'll see here, when you compress it, it hits the chassis, and I don't really like that, even though that the suspension is a lot softer. The setup I had previously were the larger helper springs on the bottom, and while that kind of worked, it's a little bit stiff. So I've actually found a happy medium. Instead of using the larger helper spring, just use the smaller helper spring on the bottom with nothing on top, and that seems to work better, has a lot of clearance, and it's a little bit softer than it was with the larger helper spring on the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the smaller helper springs on the bottom and just run it that way. Alright, so I've replaced all the large helper springs with the small helper springs, and I've put the small helper springs on the bottom on all four corners. It's got a bit more flex now, it's a little bit softer. Not as soft as when the large helper springs were on the top, but at least it doesn't have that helper spring hitting the frame on compression anymore. So I think I'm happy with this setup now, and we'll go ahead and move on to the shocks. For this part of the series, you'll need the parts that are in this bag right here, pretty much all of the shock parts. For step 29, you'll need these following parts. Now, for the purpose of this build, I'm going to put these internal springs in the shocks first and try them out. Later on, I'll probably take them out, but we'll just put them in for now. Not sure if you could see what I just did there. There's a little clip like this right here that holds this part of the shaft in. Now it can't come out. It's just that little clip right there. That completes step 29. For step 30, you'll need these following parts. You'll need 4 3x20s, 4 3x18s, 8 M3 lock nuts, and these 8 3mm washers. And here are the Team KK equivalents for the screws and the nuts. that completes step 30. And this completes this part of the series, these shocks all mounted up. I hope you enjoyed this part of the series. Please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and stay tuned for the next part of my GMADE Sawback Sport build series. Thanks for watching.